No Jumper, coolest podcast in the world, and today I'm in here with Big Tray Deee. How you feeling, my guy?
Oh man, what's up, dudes? I'm good, man.
Yo, it's nice to have you in here, man. It's very good. This has always been like my goal with the podcast. I'm gonna interview all these young ass dudes, get a name for myself, and then I'm gonna double back and interview everybody I listened to when I was in elementary school and high school and shit.
That's guys. The stepping stone platform.
You feel me? Man, let's just start talking about this memory that we were just taking in together. We were watching this video on YouTube. If you search Tray Deee 2003, it comes right up. It was just you. Was it right before you caught the case that had you go away for like 10 years, or what was that time period was?
That was approximately a year or so before I actually caught the case. I think that was if that was in 2003, it was at the very beginning. Time was moving so fast then, it could have been. But I believe it was either 2002, around that time. It was wild, man. The streets was popping, everywhere you went, you if you was pushing that gangster lifestyle, you had to really be represented on the 24-hour level.
Which is interesting because when I think about you and your career, I mean, 2003, you'd been around for a while by that point. It's not like you were a spring chicken at that point, but you were still very much getting it in right there.
Yeah, because that's where I come from. I come from the streets. I come from getting down with the, with the gangster lifestyle real heavy. So that's always expected when somebody meets me. It's like, I've had people approach me at Universal Studios and they with their homeboys and they hit me up with their set and be like, yeah, what that whoop-de-whoop like?
Really?
And I bang my set back and they be like, that's right, cuz, that's right. I knew it and I knew you was a real one, because a lot of times when people do that and you be like, oh, okay, that's cool. No, that's not how you present yourself. You present yourself like, you're gonna represent yourself at all times where you from.
Right.
And I done did that, and that's just so expected that to reflect on that and see that going on at that time, it let me see what kind of mind frame I was in, and
to me, when I'm looking at that, I'm just seeing the way that shit was before the internet, in the sense that footage got a chance to rock. You didn't see it for a long time. Just the fact that there was just the look of that club that you were in.
Right.
It looked like everybody was having such a good time. They didn't all have their phones out. It was a very different atmosphere, even though it was only, it was 16 years ago. Feels like it was just the other day, but it also feels like it was a million years ago.
It felt like it was a lifestyle ago.
Yeah.
It does. It really does. That was actually a boat party.
See, that's interesting too.
Yeah,
in Long Beach?
Yeah.
Queen Mary?
We pulled off. No, it wasn't at the Queen Mary.
Okay.
It was over by the little docking area by the West Coast Inn. I think they changed the name of that hotel, but we launched off from over there, and it was free drinks and free food, and just come out and party with the homies.
Yeah.
And my boy Dale Dog, rest in peace, from Main Street, and he orchestrated that. He put that together.
That was fire. Yeah, because I lived in, just to make it clear, I lived in Long Beach like 2010 to 2014. So that's one thing when I'm watching all your videos and stuff. It's very dope to get to see that impression of Long Beach. In particular, I was just watching you and Stupid Young doing the video together and shit, and that was dope because that was right where I was staying in Cambodia town.
Right. Yeah, shout out to Stupid Young.
Yeah.
Solid little homie.
Yeah.
Shout out to P Nice as well. Man, I just love the city, man. I always represent the city and push the city. And I know that we weren't included a lot in the early stages of hip hop on the West Coast, because before Snoop Dogg, it really was no MC that was powerful enough to represent Long Beach.
Right.
And when he got on and he made the way for all of us, we've been proud to push the LBC.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, the Snoop Dogg story and everything related to that has always been one of the most interesting plot lines in hip hop, because that was like the first, like I knew about rap pretty much since I can remember anything, but the Snoop Dogg thing was a different thing, because when Snoop came out, all of a sudden this was just like the coolest motherfucker in the world to me.
The entire world.
So you were thinking the same thing?
Yeah, in the entire world. Yeah. His whole style and approach was unique.
Right. I feel like I kind of understand where little kids are coming from when they look at a Lil Pump or whoever they're looking up to.
Right.
It's like that was what Snoop Dogg was to me, because I never seen somebody that tall with the cool ass afro, the long ass flannel shirt. I didn't really know what the blue bandanas was about and shit, but I just knew that this was just like the coolest dude I ever seen in like '92.
Yeah. And I was on my way out of prison at that time.
Oh, okay.
And we hadn't met.
Because you're older than him?
Before, yeah.
Okay.
I'm older than Snoop. And we hadn't met at that time, and people were coming into prison at that time, and they was like, man, your homeboy Snoop Dogg, man, he's so hard, and man, and I'm like, Snoop Dogg? I'm like, Snoop Dogg? He's a few years younger than me.
Right.
So I'm like, okay. So when I get out and we ran across each other, it turned out that his uncles used to be hanging with my big brother.
Okay.
So it was a connection there. But we just had never, because he was going to school and hanging with, Warren and Nate Dogg. Them was his peers then,
right.
And they was pretty close. And I was heavy in the streets. I was a little bit more heavy in the streets. But when I did finally hear him, I said, yeah, this is a bad motherfucker right here.
So when you were growing up in Long Beach, was that the feeling in Long Beach, was that you guys were sort of excluded from the like narrative of what LA hip hop was at that time before Snoop came out? Like Long Beach wasn't really being counted or represented in that whole equation?
No. Well, I didn't feel like that, and I don't believe anyone felt like that, because we didn't have any artists at that time that was really clamoring to get on to push Long Beach. Like wasn't no doors being closed to Long Beach or nothing like that. We just weren't prominent on the hip hop scene, and people probably rapped and walked around rapping in school and stuff like that, and rapping on the streets. Me and my homeboy, Lil Halfhead, we used to, play EPMD music and freestyle over that and stuff like that. But I don't think anyone really pursued rap with the passion that Snoop Dogg did. So we weren't ready to really even hit the map then. There was probably somebody that could spit a couple of songs, but that's where then you have to have his catalog and, his ability to continuously invent great music. You have to be kind of born for it.
Right.
And it's good that he did open the door for us, because that's like the paradigm for Long Beach. You know what I'm saying? Can he? Snoop Dogg. We know Snoop Dogg from Long Beach. Who else? It's like who else? So he's like the standard bearer.
What was your perspective on NWA as a kid? Was that something that you were just watching and trying to wrap your head around as a youngin?
Well, we right next to Compton.
Right.
Long Beach. So we ventured into Compton regularly, and we knew what was going on. We had our dope dealing out there, and, hustling and low riders and Jerry curls and pretty much everything NWA was pushing. But for them to vocalize the lifestyle of LA per se, the way that they did from Compton, but Ice Cube was from LA at the time, and he is from LA, but for him to unite with them and for them to represent, Compton is known as a notorious hub of Los Angeles County. So for them to come out so brazen and blatant as they did, it was just inspiring to feel like that you could be a gangster and be successful. That's how it hit me.
Because this is like the early days of like hip hop as a whole forming in California. So it's like that must have sort of made every different neighborhood start to look at it as like, oh, this is a possibility for me to come out and do something. But they also had a very like political edge to the way that they were coming out lyrically and shit.
Yeah, I think the politics came into play later on. You know,
this is true. Yeah.
You know, the fuck the police that launched, you know, the full notoriety across America and all that. That wasn't even. I don't even think that was meant to be a political statement. It was a rap song. You know, like, man, fuck these motherfuckers, man. You know, and it just caught on like that because they took offense. Well, the police, you know, all law enforcement took offense. We protecting the country, and y'all not protecting us. You know, y'all harassing us, and you know, kind of like lit a fire in a political arena. But you know, I think they was just coming from the heart, making the song. Like, man, these motherfuckers steady fucking with us, man. Fuck them.
Yeah,
you know?
It's interesting to think that like "fuck the police" is probably like the most common sense, average thought process for somebody who's growing up in the hood. But then meanwhile, when white America heard that song, it was like everything that they knew was being questioned and thrown into jeopardy, you know?
Right.
Because they're like, that's who's stopping my house from getting burglarized at night in their mind. It's like, how could anybody hate the cops like that? You know?
But I mean, even white America knows that, you know, even from, you know, the Irish cops in New York, you know, to the whole structure of law enforcement. You know, they got their own blue wall of silence. They got kind of like a gangster lifestyle to how they push too, because it's them against, you know, all the criminal element, as they say.
Yeah.
And if you don't fall on the side of go police, then you know you part of the criminal element.
And shit's crazy because I've talked to people who are like close family members of cops or whatever, and they told me that it's very much like a culture of extreme laziness where anybody who bites off more than they have to in terms of the workload of that department is looked upon like an asshole. Like you want to look into the stuff that you have to look into, like say that the department's being judged on however many murders they have that year or whatever. It's like, but anybody who comes in and starts trying to do more is really looked down upon because, you know, there's infinite crime. Like, if you were a cop, you could think of 5 million crimes that are going on here. People speeding, not to mention all the drugs, not to mention everything. So it's very much on them to decide what they want to go after. So then all the other cops are looking at them as, why the fuck are you making it harder on us? Why are you making it so we have to do more paperwork?
Right. Getting overseeing every little detail and little minor issue.
Yeah.
Well, that's how, you know, that's the general feeling in the ghetto. You know, when you see they got more cops that patrol ghetto areas and urban areas than they do suburban areas. And why? Because if anybody looks suspicious out there, not supposed to be out there, the citizens are going to call the police more faster.
Right.
You know, and it's like, you know, and it's also a fear and intimidation tactic. You know, we're right here watching you. You know, don't move, don't breathe wrong, don't, you know, and you know, it's all a psychological strategy. You know, I believe from the government, and it's just based on how you view them as how you understand what their purpose is.
Definitely. When you think about your childhood growing up in Long Beach and everything, what's your perspective on how, like in retrospect, your perspective on how all of that shit was, how the cops treated you, how much violence you were surrounded by, having all these years? Tell me a little bit about your childhood and how you viewed the environment you grew up in.
That was a good question.
A little rambling.
Yeah, no, that was a good question. No, I dig that. The environment I grew up in was rough, but at the same time, it was a lot of camaraderie amongst the citizens of the community. And, you know, if you know, I grew up doing bad shit, you know, robbing people, you know, snatching purses, you know, the whole gamut. You know, I really wasn't a dope dealer, but I've sold dope. And it's just like you pitting yourself against the law at that point. So I understood that. The only time I really felt victimized by the police was, like I said, their presence, their ever presence in everything going on in the inner city. But you know, you don't hear about meth labs getting raided the way you hear crack houses getting batter rammed and things like that. So I was there when they came with the batter ram.
Right.
You know, I wasn't there when they brought the batter ram out, but the year that they brought the batter ram out, I was, you know, I was around.
Right.
And, you know, it's just how the police browbeat and oversee the urban environment without ever trying to develop an understanding and a relationship with the people, unless they're trying to get you to tell on somebody, or they see some little kids and be like, hey, you guys need to stay in school, don't be around here doing this and that. But they micromanage the job that they're doing, like you say, and piss other people off, like, man, let's just do the jobs, like get the murderers and the robbers and things like that. And it's gotten worse now, because now they began, you know, outright killing young black males, unarmed, you know, women disappearing off the streets, found hanged in jail cells, things like that. And it's like, if I can't trust you to protect me, or at least not get off my ass, I can't even trust you now not to kill me.
Right.
So that has been pretty much pervasive since my childhood, and my understanding of the police was to avoid them at all costs. Don't talk to them. Don't trust them. You know.
Did your parents tell you that, or did you have to figure that out on your own?
Well, I never knew my dad.
Okay.
So, you know, my mom, she was kind of like the law of the household. She was the law of the household. And outside of that, what I went and exposed myself to was nothing that she led me to. So she didn't know what my interaction was going to be like with law.
Right.
So she never instilled that in me. You know, but based on the path that I chose, that was the understanding amongst my peers.
Right.
And, you know, those that I encountered,
Right.
you know, my role models and things like that, it was like, we don't fuck with the police.
Was your mom trying hard to keep you out of trouble and it just didn't work?
Yeah, she tried hard with all of us.
Right.
But, you know, she had her own situation to deal with as well, being, being a woman with 6 children.
Right.
That, you know, she left St. Louis to come to California and make a better life for us. So, you know, and she was dealing with her own personal crisis in her life at different times, you know, and I mean, I get it, you know what I'm saying? I get it. So, you know, I don't hold her, I can't say she molded my thinking into not liking the police or nothing, but she was always a realist, and she always let me know that whatever I was doing, I should protect myself and be cautious whoever I dealt with.
Right.
So.
Were you the oldest, the youngest, in the middle?
The baby.
The baby.
The baby.
How do you see that having impacted you? Like, you know, people always talk about how the youngest one is the one who has the least guidance, because the parent is being the most strict with their first child, and then by the end, their last child, they're not really paying as much attention because they've sort of accepted at a certain point, like, the kid's gonna come out how he comes out. So it's not really a reason for me to micromanage every part of his life. Is that how you feel when you look at your childhood?
Not at all.
No?
No, not at all. I was my mother's baby.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And
the last chance that she had right there too, so that makes sense too.
You know, and well, she didn't really know, because she was still I think she was probably in her 40s when she had me, early 40s or late 30s or something. And you know, fresh in California, you know, ain't no telling what her life could have turned out like had she pursued another. Then she worked at the VA hospital though, and you know, she provided for us and everything. But you know, I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that I had somebody in my life that cared enough about me that she didn't treat me no different than any other the kids in the house, but she gave me a special love as the baby, and I took advantage of that in different ways, but not in the way of a spoiled brat or something. I just took it to want my own independence more.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, cause I seen my brothers having their own independence, and my sisters, you know, my older sisters doing what they did, and then my youngest sister, to me, is 4 years older than me.
Right.
So I was really like the baby, you know, because she at some point she used to help watch me and stuff like that. So watching them, I developed my own sense of wanting to be independent and wanting to call my own shots. So that's why I started hanging out with different people and doing different things.
Right.
That was against what she wanted me to do and against the law.
When you look back at your childhood, were you in the streets before you started really thinking about rapping? Was rapping not a serious thing for a long time?
I was in the streets at 10, 9.
Jeez.
Yeah, you know, in the streets doing shit, you know, and yeah, gang banging at 11.
Right.
You know, so it's been a journey for me in that lifestyle, way away from me even, you know, concentrating on, like, you know, different variations of family life and what I went through and what I was understanding. I was trying to get in the streets at a young age.
Right.
You know, I was trying to get out there and see what was going on, what was happening.
Were you just curious?
My own money. I was curious.
Or were you really like thinking about the money side of things? Like, I want to be independent. I don't want to have to rely on anybody.
I was curious, and I had a thirst for knowing shit. And I picked up things easily.
Curiosity killed the cat.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I wasn't in the house trying to play with no coloring books and, you know, do homework and stuff like that. I got kicked out of school in the 3rd grade.
3rd grade?
Yeah.
What for?
Fighting the teacher.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
they don't like that. She won.
Yeah, Mr. Candace, shout out Mr. Candace.
You're like, I'm never gonna let a girl win against me again. Fuck that.
She got me though, but yeah, man. So I went to a couple of continuation schools and things like that for a month or two here and there, and you know, I was getting caught with weed and, you know, switchblades and things like that. So I was always kind of like dealing with the law.
It's good to know that the weed is the one thing that's never changed with you, right?
Oh man, this is it. This is it. And you know, now that, you know, I don't mix it with alcohol or anything else,
Right.
you know, psychotropic, psychedelic, or none of that.
Right.
You know, it just it keeps me in a more calm state to process things and act a little more calmly now that I know.
Right.
I used to be kind of like impulsive and, you know,
A little bit more on edge.
It translates in my music. You
Same.
know?
Yeah. No, I think about quitting weed sometimes just because, you know, with the working out and everything, sometimes I feel like, you know, it's holding me back a little bit in terms of my cardio ability and shit. My girlfriend is the #1 person that does not want me to stop smoking weed because she's like, you're a fucking asshole a lot of times when you ain't smoking weed, you know?
Yeah, I could imagine. I could imagine. And sometimes when I be off, you know, because I quit smoking once upon a time, and, you know, I know how I was real anal about a lot of things.
I get so organized and straight up and agitated. Somebody say one thing to me I don't like, I just get mad as fuck. You know, there's no barrier between me and my like overtly analytical side when I'm not smoking weed.
Got you. Yeah, that's understandable.
Right.
This has never changed with me, man. The weed has gotten better, and you know, the ways of smoking has changed. I was tripping off when you said you don't really get out with wax. I was watching one of your interviews. You was like, you don't need to get that high.
I was watching, or I was interviewing Lil Flip, and he's smoking a joint at noon, and it's got crazy moon rocks in it. I'm smelling it burn, and I'm realizing he's smoking this big old moon rock thing. I'm like, God damn. That's a lot for noon.
Yeah.
Moon rocks is serious. That's a lot to bite off.
It is. Shout out, Corrupt. Yeah, you know. I'm waiting on some of my sun rocks now. You know, I got that cracking as well.
Right.
It's just a mixture of keef.
Sun
and
rocks.
wax.
Okay.
Sun rocks. Yeah, it's devastating.
Damn, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's devastating.
That's good to know. So you mentioned like catching your case before you even knew about Snoop Dogg. What age were you when that happened?
Well, this was the case that I caught. The last case I caught, it was a violation. I think it was for a robbery.
Okay.
Armed robbery that the people didn't come to court on. And I wound up doing a violation.
Okay.
Which was the rest of my time. Excuse me. And it was 1992. So I maxed out. I missed the riots.
Oh, wow.
You know, I got locked up in about February. And I did the time, and I maxed out in about the middle or the end of December, and I got out in '92, and I ran across Snoop in somewhere in '93, towards the middle or the end of '93.
So what was it like hearing about the LA riots while you were locked up? Because I'm sure everybody you were locked up with was mad as shit that they couldn't get out there and see what the fuck was going on, right?
Man, watching that on the news, man, you know, I'm going to tell you something about being detached from it. You see the devastation as well as you know, when you're in the middle of it and you're living it, it's probably so chaotic and so wild at the time that it's like, you know, man, we can get this and they not protecting this and let's go have this and grab that and take that. You're living in the moment.
Right.
But when you're actually watching it take place and you seeing things burning and you seeing assaults and you seeing, you know, the all martial law and all this, it's like, man, this is fucking nuts.
Oh, yeah. But it must have felt good, too, to at least, like, even though we know that, you know, a riot is ultimately not really productive and a lot of the people who are getting hurt was, like, the local community, the local business owners that didn't really do anything to anybody. But just being that you had been, like, the victim of so much intense policing and had witnessed so much bullshit, it must have felt like, because to a certain extent...
I don't think we got them. I don't think we got the police.
Right,
I don't think they suffered from that.
Right.
Too bad.
But that was the idea.
They still got their salary.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? None of them got fired.
Probably got a whole lot of overtime, really.
Yeah, I don't think, yeah, exactly. You know, so they exactly, that's the point. They probably had more overtime, so they benefited the most out of all that destruction and chaos.
But at least it was like something, because to a certain extent, you growing up...
The only thing was the peace treaty.
Oh, okay. So that came out after. But let me just ask this, is that, so just being in the hood, it's like you must have really felt like, to a certain extent, that you were voiceless. Like nobody was going to listen to you complain. So then all of a sudden, it might have been, you know, shooting at the Korean guy who fucking owns the corner store, or it might have been, you know, all kinds of violence, burning down buildings and stuff. But it must have still at least felt like, well, at least we're capable of doing something that will get on the news, because to a certain extent, you must have felt like you didn't have a voice.
I'm always with rebellion and revolution. You know, I'm not saying that I condemn what took place in no way. I'm just saying that you perceive it different. When you're in the middle of it, participating in it, which I was unable to be.
Right.
Then when you're detached from it, watching it on the screen, watching it unfold, watching them set up to go in, watching, you know, this place of business burning that these people had nothing to do with, you know what I'm saying? They losing everything, you know. And it was just like putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot. You know, that's how I seen it.
Definitely. It was like an overflowing of emotion that didn't have anywhere to go, you know? It was like there was just so much anger and...
It was an implosion.
Yeah.
Instead of an explosion.
Right, it was insular, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you know, I probably wouldn't feel like that if I was out there then, because I probably would have went in a couple of the right places and extracted some of the right stuff that would have set me up for a good while instead of going to grab liquor and
Yeah, you probably would have had a nice TV.
But, you know, you dig it?
Your TV would have automatically got upgraded right there.
You dig it? Yeah, so that's probably what took place with me. But when I was gone and I seen it, and then when I got out, you know, it was dog was popping. So, you know, I kind of merged with him within like the first year.
How did that relationship sort of take shape? Did he look at you as just like somebody who was a little bit more streetwise, a little bit more tapped in on the street level that he needed?
No, I got vouched for by Big C Style from 19th Street, and Big C Style was like, you know, he was pretty much the main enforcer on the DPG right there. And besides Nate Dogg was the enforcer himself.
Really?
Rest in peace. But
So Nate Dogg was
ex-Marine.
he was harder than we gave him credit for as fans.
I think people gave him kind of credit for being a gangster though.
But he was so early as a singer, you know.
Man, Nate was the real.
Really?
Nate was the real authentic.
That's good to know. I should look into him more. Like I never really thought about that side of him besides just the music.
Yeah, solid all the way around.
Wow.
And you know, so when he vouched for me, when C Style vouched for me, and he brought Snoop. Well, I met Snoop, and then he brought him over my house later on, a couple months after, about a month or so after, when he said he wanted to do a song. When I met him, we was out in front of a club and stuff like that, and I was like, okay, I still really didn't know who he was, because all I knew about rap was like Eric B. and Rakim and, you know, EPMD and Too Short.
You were still looking at New York as real rap. That was like the rap industry.
No, I looked at Eazy-E, Ice Cube, you know, King T. You know, I knew who the rappers were in on the West Coast. You know, all the way to the Click. Right. You know, E40 and the Click up in the Bay, you know, Sebo, all of I knew we had some hitters, but it was like I didn't know the impact that Snoop had made when he came out. I still wasn't aware of that because I was just coming home from a prison sentence.
You miss so much when you're away too, like that, right? You come home and it's just like, oh, this crazy information coming in.
You're dealing with what's going on right there on the yard and all that. You really not, oh man, this is new rap out here and all that. Man, yeah, okay, could you send me $50 so I can get me some lotion and shit, and some cup of noodles and shit? So, you know, I really didn't know, but when I got linked up with him and seen the impact that he had across the board, people were sampling in his music like Biggie and Redman, and you know they would actually sample his music on their albums and stuff like that, and it was like, damn, you know, they really fucking with Dog. Right. So you know, it was like, okay, this is pretty big. Then when I was actually brought into it, on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack. Right.
Which I think was the first time I ever heard you as a kid.
Yeah, that was my debut, I believe.
Right.
That was around the same time as the show with Dropping Bombs I did with South Central on there. But that didn't, I don't think that album, I know that album wasn't as
impactful.
As impactful on the West Coast as the Murder Was the Case soundtrack. Yeah. So that's when people like really like, oh, okay. And then I was able to get on the Dog Pound album. And then we did the LBC Crew, Beware of My Crew thing. And it was in the movie with Martin Lawrence, The Thin Line Between Love and Hate, Martin Lawrence and Bobby Brown. And we got to perform in the movie. So that was kind of like my introduction into the game. And I seen just how being linked up with him, things were just happening. We were still trying to put together an album at the time. Right. And it just came about that, you know, in doing the work, other opportunities and avenues open. I was recording with Roger Troutman, rest in peace, and all that. And it was like, that was phenomenal to me. I grew up off Zapp and Roger.